An old man and his family wander along a parched riverbed in western East Timor. At 90, Lewis Martins is a witness to East Timor's many battles. But their fight now is largely with other East Timorese. Mention the local militia by name, and Lewis goes to war.
Against Bessie Merabuti?
Yeah.
That?
Yeah.
It's a view that resonates in the shell of this half-built cathedral. In the southwest town of Sual, 1,800 refugees are relying on the church to shield them from the militia's campaign of terror. It's East Timor's largest concentration of refugees, but it's a small fraction of the problem. Across the former Portuguese colony, 50,000 people are simply too terrified to go home. But the vote they expect to change everything is just days away. They can't go home, neither can they ignore the excitement. In a town where whispering you're an independent supporter is a dangerous act, they're yelling it.
This is an historical event for us, that they will feel freely and they will talk anything.
30 de agosto ne buat je ke dia activitebes fura activitebes mai ami hakara ukun rasikan hatama ia independencia hatama ihane waselu ami lakoi nedin ami ohinlor hakara mate kamoris ukun rasika hidup viva 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 Ramazarda viva viva Timothy Kopalima viva.
Opposite the refugees across East Timor's political divide, there are tens of thousands of men with weapons. Civilian militias, the muscle of the autonomy campaign to keep East Timor as part of Indonesia. They're accused of murdering scores of independent supporters and terrorising most of the territory.
Pro-kemerdekaan, pro-otonomi pun yang raimak Timor ne. Ambil apa halai seus Timor. Ambil ram fakar pun fakar Timor.
At first, Maliana farmer Ruben Gonsalves didn't want us filming his men. This militia commander doesn't trust Western journalists, but eventually he let us climb aboard a pro-Indonesia convoy into one of East Timor's notorious militia strongholds. He says the pipe guns and pistols, machetes and spears are for self-defence, and he doesn't like the term militia. To him, this is more like community policing.
Pertama perlihatnya bahwa kami kelompok milisia, kami kelompok pro perdamaian. Emang kalau salah tindak, emang kalau salah tindak. Biar pro mereka harus salah tindak, pro otonomi harus salah tindak. Nema kami hahu, tu agora.
It's an unsettling feeling, riding with Ruben's militiamen into Maliana. The last time we were here, we saw how suddenly the militia can change the mood in this western town. There was a morning church service, East Timorese children singing. There was a crowd curious about a supply helicopter opposite the UN base opened just the day before. And there was the militia. Reminding everyone who rules Maliana.
Suruh saya tidak mau datang nonton helikopter dari Unamid. Mereka larang, mau paksa, mau dibunuh kalau tidak masuk besi merah putih, mau dibunuh, diancam, diteror.
The attack shook the UN mission in East Timor. For a brief time, it looked as though militia thuggery might force the whole operation into retreat. In fact, the UN hung on, but it's still a daily battle dealing with the consequences of militia activity.
And all these troubles start by behind them, the military, behind all this group.
Another town, another refugee crisis. In Same, outspoken local priest Joao da Silva looks to the UN for help. All that stands between the militias and the UN refugees or anyone else is Indonesian police. And who stands behind the militias? According to Father Joao, it's the independence movement's long-time enemy, Indonesia's military. The military formed the militia.
Yes.
And still supports the militia.
Yes, they are. They still support the militia.
I think people are dying as a result of this crisis. It's not something that you can easily measure.
Simon Williamson is among those taking convoys of food trucks through militia-controlled East Timor to the refugees. The Australian aid worker is worried the disruption has already been so great it could lead to widespread disease and starvation.
It's weird, certainly worse than I expected. I think the key problem at the moment is that because people haven't been able to plant their crops, there's no rice going in, there's no corn going in, that the next harvest won't be there.
Since last year, people didn't work in the corn fields and rice fields. Even now is the hard time for a coffee harvest, but some of them they abandon their coffee plantation and run for their safety for another place.
The border between East and West Timor. Some East Timorese will tell you next year they'll need a passport to go across here. They don't now. And hundreds have fled across this border in the last few months alone to escape the fear in the east. But there's a crucial difference in the camps over the border. Here those we spoke with are running not from militias, but pro-independence forces.
Kami pro-integrasi. Jadi kami pro-integrasi takut terhadap pro-kemerdekaan. Karena mereka membunuh kami.
Leoneto dos Santos insists the ballot will decide whether he and his family ever make it back home.
Jika tim-tim merdeka kami yang pro-integrasi ini, mereka bunuh kami habis.
Anti-integrasi ini kalau bagaimana halai, lali ke Hanoi.
Joao Tavares doesn't accept the claims that his militias have caused the refugee problem. The head of the pro-autonomy forces says he commands 50,000 men committed to keeping East Timor's links with Jakarta. In the autonomy campaign's theme tune, they sing of Indonesia's red and white flag. Their weapons left on the trucks, the men even join a scramble for lollies. The Maliana rally has a picnic quality. But there's nothing leisurely about Joao Tavares' forecast for East Timor once the vote is counted. He tells us to expect violence.
Memang tuirahun Hanoi ini akan terjadi tambah jiwa Timor ni nunca akui kalah.
According to all the rumors that if the autonomy or if the pro-independence wins, maybe some of them will be cut off.
Joao Tavares insists he wants peace after the vote, but he won't discuss what he and his forces have planned if they lose the ballot.
Saya sudah menang. Untuk apa saya jawab pertanyaan itu? Nanti kalau jajak pendapat saya kalah, baru bapak tanya saya jawab.
The only place people will be able to go to is flee across the border to West Timor.
According to aid workers, violence after the vote would turn East Timor's refugee problem into a disaster.
I mean, if there is a real serious deterioration in security, we want to get as much materials and supplies in here before that happens, so people have got something to survive with.
And if it does happen, how bad could this be?
It's bad as you've seen anywhere in the world from that point of view. If you can't get in here and they've got no food and medicine, or their water's cut off and they're being threatened, and there's no help coming in, that's disaster of the worst kind for these people.
Around Sual's half-built cathedral, independence leaders say the local militia has already told them to look out. When the vote's over, they're a target.
You will see on the 1st and 2nd of September. It means that they will attack for the people, especially the refugees that right now are living in the residence of C.N.R.T.
In fact, the militia threats and fears of aid workers have barely dented enthusiasm for the vote. Here, of all places, they're exposed if independence wins. A concentration of known independence supporters, defenceless in a militia-controlled town. But that fear is no longer enough to dampen excitement as East Timor votes.